What's up, guys? It's Gabe. This is a midweek market update. I'm just here to share my ideas, my opinions, my viewpoint of the market. None of this is financial advice. You guys know that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a hungry trader that wants to make a lot of money in these markets and wants to share my game plans with you guys so you can see what's worked for me in these markets over time. It's taken me years to develop these strategies, guys. This isn't something I just snapped my fingers and just figured out that I'm going to trade mean reversion trades, 50 EMA compression patterns, and long-term resistance breakouts. These aren't just something I just snapped my fingers and started trading. This is something that I've looked and scanned for hours and years of my life to hone in and have a skill set. But it's a skill set that will pay me for the remainder of my life as well. And it's a skill set that I'm always hungry to develop and sharpen even tighter. So none of this is new stuff. This is how the market has moved for years and how it will continue to move for years. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm just finding what works, managing my risk, and capitalizing on the A-plus opportunities when they come around. As you guys know, I always start with the broad market and I break it down from a big picture perspective. And it's going to be hard for me to get in and take a long trade, get long in a small cap, a mid cap, if the broad market isn't setting up for that type of trade. I like to trade small cap breakouts. I like to go long on small caps when the market's in a consistent uptrend. And right now, ever since we've kind of double topped up here at the 750 level, there's been some volatility up here at these highs. There's been, some moves downward that, we've seen 30 points in the span of 3 days. We've seen a gap down from 740 to 716. Guys, that's not normal. That's something worth noting. We've seen some red days up here at these tops that are the highest volume days that we've seen throughout this entire uptrend. All right, so keep an eye on that. We also saw the price broke structure here. If we're in an uptrend, if this whole entire pattern's an uptrend, and then we have a low, and then we have a close below the low, okay? And then we've also failed to break these highs. So there's a potential for the trend to put in a short-term reversal right here from an uptrend to a downtrend. We just have to see where we go from here. Do we fill this gap or do we follow through down to the low 690s on QQQ? I'm not sure. That's why I'm pretty hands off here. And there's only a couple trade opportunities that even pique my interest for the end of the week. Let's get into it. And same thing with SPY. SPY's a little bit more attached to this 50 EMA. SPY's got a little bit more of a constructive look up here near the top. Potentially a bounce off this 50 EMA. If we get the gap fill tomorrow, if we fill this gap, that's absolutely a pretty bullish look heading into the end of the week and next week. But again, I'm patient. Nothing's telling me right here to go foot on the pedal. Now let's get into the two trades that could be potential A-plus setups. And let's start with MU, okay? MU had earnings tonight, and it took a rocket, bro. I'm talking 14% overnight. Who knows where it opens tomorrow? There's no telling. It was a long-awaited earnings, blew the expectations. It was just a huge earnings call for MU. Tons of profit, tons of revenue growth, and this stock is back at the highs. To be honest, I don't give a damn about the fundamental. I don't give a damn about the earnings report. I look at the setup here, and I'm thankful again for another potential blow-off short trade on MU. We've seen how in the past, I've seen charts that have set up again and again before we finally got the big trade that paid. And I just think there's something brewing here on MU. We've got a chart that's still over 50% extended from the 50-day. tomorrow on this gap up, we're going to be potentially opening again on a large gap up above the upper Bollinger Band with a volume bar that I picture being an outlier. And this thing's been trading 50 million every single day. But if we can see a volume bar that beats any other volume bar in the history of this name, something that trades up in the 80, 100 million, and that's going to be tough. At these prices, that's going to be very tough. I don't know if that's possible. If that's possible, we could see something set up A+ on MU here. We're going to have to trend up above the highs of the range, 1200, 1240, I believe it is. We're going to have to see some volatile move up above that high in either early market, pre-market. That's going to be the trade where you risk high a day and then you look for a crack below the opening range to go short on. Ideally, this thing has another gap up and then it goes tomorrow, or a gap up and then most likely a smaller range day and it kind of chills. And you're hands off until the next day when you could potentially also look for a crack below low of day to trade it back to the downside. But again, I know position. I actually sold my position a little premature on the gap down from Monday to Tuesday. When you see an option go up 200%, you got to lock in some profit. And that's what I did. And I'm glad I did. If I would have been pretty greedy with it and held through earnings, I'd have got smoked. Brother, I'd have lost a lot of money. So I'm not about that. I'm about preserving capital when I can, locking in big gainers, and taking A+ trades. And heck, this thing might present itself again later on in the week. So stay tuned for the trade. Now, just like this MU is a mean reversion trade. You can call it parabolic short. You can call it blow off top. You can call it a mean reversion trade. It is a form of a mean reversion trade. And mean reversion trades can also come to the upside too on a chart like BABA. Okay, the next one we'll get into. BABA has traded down now for 7 consecutive weeks. 7 consecutive weeks in a row. And I go here to the weekly chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks of closes below the open. Now, historically, that's not the most of all time. 10, I think 10 or 12 is what ChatGPT says the most consecutive down weeks in the history of BABA. But 7 is definitely that's pretty extreme. That's an outlier for sure. Now, the chart's about 20% extended from the 50-day. All right. And that's not insane. From the 200-day, we're very extended. We're 50 points extended from the 200-day. About 33%. That's pretty significant, but we could go farther from this 50-day. I'm not saying this is A+. Now, if it gaps down tomorrow, then it's intermediate term. It's probably B+ to look for some sort of bounce trade, some sort of intraday stair-stepping action to get long on this thing. But it would have to gap down like at least 4 or 5% for me to be super interested in that. What I'd like to see, okay, an ideal scenario here, and notice, guys, how it took me years to really realize this, but the ideal scenario, it usually requires a little bit of patience on our part. It almost always requires us to really wait, and then wait a little bit longer than we think we need to take action. The ideal trade, here's what I'm visualizing, guys. If I could get you extra bars here and kind of show you. Now, the volume is what this trade's missing. There's been no true capitulation. And when I say capitulation, I mean people doing anything and everything they can to get rid of their shares. They're panicking. They're in pain. They're fearful, right? All these emotions are running through their heads, and they're doing anything they can to liquidate the stock. You'll see that in terms of huge volume. Like here's an example, right? Here was a capitulation phase on SPY back in April of last year when Trump dropped the tariff news. All right, the tariff day when he announced massive tariffs on anything that was imported outside the US. This is capitulation, guys. This is fear, greed. This is, I will do anything I can to get out. All right, and a lot of smart investors, smart money knows when people are fearful, that's when it's time to be aggressive. All right, just on the inverse, when people are greedy, that's when the time is to be conservative. Think with a level head. The level-headed trader always wins. All right, so capitulation phase looks like this. And here's the phase that I see Baba in right now. Right here. Oh, I hate that ellipse. Okay, here you go. Picture a steady, controlled downtrend. Just a bear market. And then we get what's called this dead cat bounce. Where bulls try, but they're overwhelmed, okay? And they can't get a real grip on it. And then the selling gets a little more aggressive, and then true capitulation. Now, I'm not saying we'll have the type of market where, just really terrible news headlines is going to drop and tank this thing. But for it to be A+, and this would be A+ capitulation. When you look at the Bollinger Bands, the extension from the 50-day moving average, not only do we trade completely below, we opened and closed below, and then we gap down on large volume. Ding, ding, ding. That's the A+ trade right there, guys. Open and close outside of the Bollinger Band. A gap down on significant volume. People are doing everything they can. They're calling their brokers, get me out, get me out. Pay whatever you can to get me out. That's the A+ setup for a mean reversion snap back to reality. Here's what I'm picturing in Baba. Because you can see here, it's not under the Bollinger Band yet. It's just kind of riding it. It's just kind of controlled selling right now. Okay, what we need to see here, we need to see this thing have a dead cat bounce. Something back up to 105, 110. And then we need to see an aggressive drop down. Capitulation, multiple gaps down on increasing volume. Show me that people are unloading this stock hand and fist. And then I'm interested, okay? Then I'm interested. The Bollinger Band will kind of tighten up. This range will get a little bit more contracted here. And then we truly expand to the downside. And I look to capture that rubber band trade back up. Something in the form of a 20 or a 30 point bounce in a single day. It's not out of the question. Here we went from 130 to 145. Okay. Here we went from, in the span of just 3 days, 140 to 165. Here we had a massive gap up. From 114 to 130, 140 in 2 days. That's the trade I want in Baba. I'm patient. A mean reversion. A true capitulation where the market is in a state of fear. But that's when it gets fun, guys, is when you have these setups. You've seen them take place. You've executed on them before. And now the only challenge is staying patient for them to appear, sitting on your hands until they do. A lot of people, a lot of traders, they don't make it in this game. They don't make it for the simple fact that they can't sit still and do nothing until the opportunity presents itself. I'm just sharing with you guys what works. One of my go-to trade patterns that I plan on executing here within the coming weeks. Stay tuned. I'll keep you guys updated with the end of the week. At the very least, I'll be back on Sunday evening for a pre-market watch list for the upcoming week. Peace, guys. That's all I got for today.